what you love and call it work. Today I am doing what I love, and I have this feeling that today's show is going to be very impactful. It's not often you get to talk to entrepreneurs who have had tremendous success and then are figuring out a way to pass it along to the next person in line because it's what we love to do. I am here with DJ Stephan. He is the co-founder of SkySlope. He is helping me with the Growth Factory, and we are in the process of passing along some of what we have taken in over the years to those entrepreneurs that are on the rise. How you doing, DJ?
I'm doing great, Mark. It's great to be here.
I appreciate you joining me. It's finally here. I've wanted you on my show for like 7 or 8 years, and finally, I don't know, I've been lazy or whatever. Finally got it happen. We did have your co-founder of SkySlope, Tyler Smith, on the show at least once or twice. He's a good buddy of mine. But maybe we can get a little bit of your background, and that'll sort of set the tempo for us passing on a little bit of wisdom to those next people in line.
Let's do it. I think it's helpful to kind of get some context to go further back than SkySlope. So my entrepreneurial journey started actually 2009. I was attending the University of Arizona. It was the best entrepreneurship school I could afford in the country. So I upped and left and went there. After being there for 1 semester, I met a aspiring entrepreneur like myself. We hit it off, and we were bouncing back and forth ideas. And he came up with the idea of, why don't we put lecture notes online, create a marketplace around buying and selling course notes. It was already happening offline. We were just going to facilitate it online. We both were kind of in the space already.
I love it. That way you don't have to go to class, right? Is that kind of, or take notes? You could be a lazy student. That would be me.
We always said, quote unquote, for students that fell behind, But yes, there was a lot of kids that substituted that for going to class. We had a little home court advantage at University of Arizona, and it just took off. We had half the student population, about 20,000 students on our application within the first 6 months. That's when we knew we had something, but it was a matter of scaling it. We obviously had big ambitions and big dreams at that time. And so we had a virtual scaling model that took about 1.5 years to really figure it out, to figure out the metrics, how to do it, how to grow it. But in that time frame, we learned a lot. We went through an accelerator out in Philadelphia called Dream It. At the time, there was only 3 accelerators in the country: Y Combinator, Techstars, and Dream It. We applied to all 3. They were the first guy that got back to us. We moved out to Philadelphia for a year. During that time, we also had a very mild claim to fame of being on the first season of Shark Tank. That was an incredible experience. I don't know if it helped us from a business perspective, but it was still a cool life experience to go through.
Didn't you have like kind of a story behind that was a unique experience on Shark Tank? We've all heard of Shark Tank, but you have like something that's special about Shark Tank.
Okay, we had a little special on us. So it was interesting actually. So we were episode like 7 or 8, and the producer called us before, about a week or 2 before we were supposed to air, and they said, "Sorry to tell you this, guys, but I don't think this show's gonna make it. They're getting such bad ratings right now that I think the show's gonna get pulled from ABC before your episode gets aired." Whoa. And we were like, "Oh, that sucks." We flew all the way out there. We did the pitch. We did everything. Our show ended up airing, and some interesting things happened on our show. First off, I think it was really the first real tech high growth company that was on the show. And so we kind of went in there with showing some charts and graphs that the Sharks hadn't seen before, some really up to the left, up to the right type of stuff. And we got in a bidding war between Barbara and the 2 Kevins. Ultimately, we went with Barbara's deal because it was almost like just really good terms. And after the show airs, or after we were on stage, we went backstage and they were doing a post interview for us. And it's like 4 sets over. It looks like it's right outside the Shark Tank, but really you have to walk about 10 minutes to get to where they interview that. And we're halfway through this post-interview, and Mr. Wonderful comes barging in, and he calls us out, and he's like, "I can't believe you guys took the Bank of Bozos, Barbara's deal." And like, he looks at both in the eye, and he goes, "I don't think we were the Sharks in there today. I think you guys were." And like, it was like this big, like, sentimental moment for Shark Tank. And at the time, we were the highest rated episode that they had. And we like to say our claim to fame was that we're the reason that Shark Tank is still around, because we were the turning point for them.
That's awesome. On Shark Tank, you don't see that many tech companies. It's usually something with a physical product or something.
Yeah.
So
we were like the first one. It was a cool experience. The demographic that watched the show at the time was like 40-year-old moms. So we got like 3 new users from the whole experience. But ultimately, like I said, it was a fun life experience to go through. We grew Note Hall for the next year. We found the metrics that work. We figured out a way to scale it. We were looking to raise a kind of a Series B. We had a lot of big names on the table looking to lead that round when a digital education company called Chegg, who many are familiar with now, they had a big run during the pandemic because they're a digital education platform, obviously. They're publicly traded now. Came knocking and said, would you guys be interested in a partnership, a perpetual partnership instead? And we said, why not? It wasn't FU money, but it was a life-changing financial event for all the founding team. And so we took that deal, worked for them for about 2 years in our earn-out vesting period. And that's what brings me up to speed with Tyler. So Tyler and I got our real estate licenses at the same time before I left to go to the University of Arizona. That's how I first met him. Now that I have a little more capital in my pocket, after selling Note Hall, I reached back out to him and I asked him, I was like, I'd love to buy some real estate investments, in Sacramento. I'm living in the Bay Area at the time. And he's like, great, DJ, I'll help you find as many investment properties as you want. I said, okay. He's like, what's the catch? He's like, I need help with this tech idea. And I was like, well, that's my wheelhouse. You're a realtor. I'm a tech guy. That's my wheelhouse. Let's talk about it. At the time, it was called SmithPremierPortalsInc.com. That was the name of it. So I said, mission number 1 is to change the name. That's first and foremost. We need to get that shortened up. But in reality, my first sit down with him, I fell in love with what he was doing. He had transformed his real estate practice. He was the number 1 realtor in Sacramento for the last 3 years at 27 years old. And he was doing twice the volume as the number 2 person with half the team. And it was all because of the solution he'd built. And I said, you're scratching your own itch on this. Like, I think there's absolutely a product market fit. So let me come in here, build out the distribution model, build out the sales team, build out the customer success team. And, the rest is kind of history from there. That was in 2012. I consulted him for the first 3 months, 2011, 2012. The beginning of that, I joined full time as the co-founder and the first partner for him. We brought on 3 employees. We were first working out of his 3rd bedroom at his house. Then we went to a strip mall location, like a little 1,000 square foot next to a Chinese restaurant and a dry cleaner. We outgrew that quickly. We moved into a 3,000 square foot space in Midtown. We said, we'll never need more space than this. And your traditional startup story, 3 months later, we're knocking on the wall to add another 3,000 square feet. And that's how the journey with SkySlope began.
Well, you guys took the paper out of the real estate transaction. I've been a little bit involved in real estate, and I know that our agents have used you and your product, and but we aren't the only ones. It's blown up. The company has blown up, and you guys brought on a partner, Fidelity, and continue to skyrocket to this day.
We've had a lot of success. I'd like to say it's kind of like the perfect storm in the sense it's the right product, the right time, and the right industry. We really, and there's some luck that's involved in it, obviously, but ultimately we put ourselves in position to get lucky. But yeah, it was, when we first started, the word paperless was like, ooh, tell me more about paperless. Now it's obviously, it's a commodity. It's the ante to play. At that time, it was revolutionary. We started off just very, picking off one broker at a time. We had kind of a land and expand model. We would target the biggest brokerage in every community, every city, and we'd give the service to them at a discounted rate. But then once we had them, we could call all their competitors and be like, hey, we have so-and-so, you guys should check us out. And that got our foot in the door. And then the product spoke for itself once we had our opportunity to show them a demo. And that grew from, like I said, out of Tyler's 3rd bedroom, one client himself being the only one, up to now we have about 250,000 agents across the country. 1/4 of all the transactions in the country run through our application one way, shape, or form now. Wow. It's been an incredible journey. We've got 200 employees in downtown Sacramento, 40,000 square feet of office space, and continue to just revolutionize the industry in new ways.
Exciting stuff. Well, I think that gives our listenership and, of course, myself a good sense as to why we should be talking to you about how to win, right? You've obviously won. You're a young guy, but you are still, for me, it's like I am learning every single day. So today I want to learn a little bit from you. Maybe we can talk just sort of generally on winning strategies and where mentorship and coaching might come into play as we be thinking about ways to win. You and I are working on the Growth Factory, which is a startup accelerator with a venture capital fund attached to it. And you have raised your hand and said, let me handle running the mentor group. So let's break that down a little bit, if you will. It's like when you think about mentorship and why you chose that job, where volunteered for that job too, which I've got to make that right with you. But it's how did you decide? I want that role within this. Does mentorship mean something to you personally?
Oh man, it's a great question. I've had firsthand experience with just so many amazing mentors throughout my life, starting with my father being the first one that molded me into the entrepreneur that I am, and then continuing onwards up my entire journey. I just felt when I heard what you guys are doing with the Growth Factor, I just felt compelled. I owe it to the next generation of entrepreneurs to impart my wisdom onto them and the things I've learned and help them to avoid some of the mistakes I made, just like the entrepreneurship group ahead of me did the same thing with me. Running a startup is hard, and it takes some luck. It takes a lot of determination. But ultimately, it's taking from the wisdoms from the people that have been there before and applying it to how it applies to your business. It can be the difference between surviving and thriving. And so that's when I heard what you were doing. I jumped in with 2 feet because I knew that this is a platform where I can provide a lot of value. And I think you and the team are the right individuals to bring this to our community in Sacramento, which desperately needs this foundation to nurture and foster the entrepreneurial endeavor.
Well, let's think about this. I appreciate that. And, if you're pairing mentors, it makes me think about like what kinds of things go into, I guess, choosing a mentor, choosing a mentee, knowing it's a match that will work. I mean, how do you kind of frame that up in terms of things that are important?
Whew, man, that's a big question. I think first and foremost, when I'm talking with an entrepreneur, I think the first thing is obviously they have to want it more than I do. This is my time is very valuable to me these days. I'm very conscious and intentional about how I spend my time, and I want to give back to entrepreneurs, but I want to make sure that I'm investing that time into those that want to help themselves. And so I always, and I probably shouldn't say this publicly because now entrepreneurs that I talk to will probably know this, but I always give them a little test. I figure out how quickly they want it. How badly do they want it? I think what a successful entrepreneur does is they find quick, easy, cheap solutions to prove their assumptions, to prove their business model. I think that's the difference between the best entrepreneurs is they know how to find those at every step along the journey, not just step 1, but at step 100. I know at SkySlope, we were always looking for how can we validate that assumption, either prove it right or wrong. And either way, it's a win because we can march in a certain direction. And so every time I meet an entrepreneur, before I leave, I'm always like, go do X, Y, or Z. And it's very simple things. It's something like go knock doors. Just go knock to your neighbors and ask them if they want this modification of their alarm system. Go to the beach and, ask them if this enhancement to their cooler is something they'd want. There's always a way to find a cheap, easy, quick validation of your idea, but it's uncomfortable. You got to go talk to people. You got to go risk failure, risk being embarrassed. But the entrepreneurs that truly have that will to win, they'll go and do that. And so it's always this little test that I do out of the gates. And I'll be honest. I mean, it's like everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but no one wants to do the work.
Am I driven enough test? Am I? Because you mentioned it. It's part of it's work, but some of it is fear holds us back. We might be the hardest working person that we know, but yet fear keeps us from walking up to somebody on the beach and saying, what's your sign or whatever you're going to ask them.
100%. I mean, it's a glamorous position nowadays. I mean, being an entrepreneur is glamorous. The media and everything has done that, but it's to truly succeed in it, you've got to get uncomfortable. If you're not being uncomfortable, then you're not doing it right. Early on, we were cold calling at SkySlope with Note Hall. We were literally passing out notes face to face with individuals. It's uncomfortable stuff. It's kind of embarrassing stuff, but it's ultimately the stuff that built us character and helped us to understand what we need to do to develop a successful product. And I think every entrepreneur has to go through that phase. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that phase never ends. You just get more comfortable doing it because you've done it so much.
Mm-hmm. Well, you think about this. So some of what you're talking about really is mindset. Some of it is around execution. And then some of it, so you think about, how to structure a mentoring program. I know we're working on those kind of decisions now at the Growth Factory. where would you prioritize mindset versus execution, if you had to? How important in terms of winning?
Yeah, mindset's everything. Mindset's the foundation that everything jumps off of. Like I said earlier, I was so blessed to have a father that was an entrepreneur, and the number one thing he passed down to me is a belief system. Is a belief system that I can do anything. I can do anything. It might not be easy. It might take longer than I expected to, but I can do anything as long as I continue to persevere. And I believe everything, culminates from that. And so I think it all starts there.
Did he say that in words, or did he live it and you just took it in? I mean, what you said, he was your mentor. I'm sure he didn't sign up for some mentoring program to be your mentor. So what did that look like in terms of you digesting that information? Because many times children don't quite want to listen to their parents.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many different ways. He was obsessed with tapes. Back in the some of your demographic might not know what tape is, but it's a cassette tape you put in a car. It's like a CD player, an MP3 player, I guess, or audio. And he was obsessed with it. Every time we got in the car, he had someone's tape that some successful person that he was aspiring to follow in their footsteps on. No music, always listening to tapes. And so it was just absorbed. I mean, it was just constantly coming at him, this positive reinforcement of a belief system, reinforcing it constantly. And then he lived it. I mean, obviously he was out there every single day, 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week to build his dream. And those two things, watching, just kind of being surrounded by that positive influence and that belief system, and then going out and executing on it, I just absorbed it through watching and through that action.
Well, it's interesting that he immersed himself in this information, in these ways that successful people think. And do you feel like, you think about who you're going to choose to be, because somebody's going to choose to be a mentee, or, go out and find a mentor. I've often thought that it's going to be difficult to, if you're a white belt, to become a black belt by talking to other white belts. You got to go spend time around the black belts. Maybe you need to be trained by the black belts. Otherwise, how are you going to raise your game up to that status? I mean, any thoughts on that? Is like aiming high for who you might want to put in your life as your mentor?
Whew, man, there's a lot that comes to me on that. I think first and foremost, we live in a beautiful day and age where anyone you want to be your mentor can be your mentor. If you want Jeff Bezos to be your mentor, he can be your mentor, because he has so many interviews on YouTube, on podcasts, whatever it is, books out there. So literally you can be mentored by them. He'll never know your name, but you can be mentored by the greatest of the great. That's why it's such an amazing time to be an entrepreneur, because we have so much access to amazing minds and amazing experiences. But I also don't want to get people lost in the absorbing too much content. You have to be applying what you're learning. Otherwise, it won't resonate. You can sit in books and read books all day long, but it's like when I wanted to learn to play golf. I would obsess over, I'd watch YouTube videos of all the pros out there that have YouTube videos. I'd watch it every night for 2 or 3 hours, but then I'd go to the range. And I would hit balls and I'd record my swing, and then I'd go back to the YouTube videos and cross-check. What am I learning? What am I doing differently? Putting it all together and putting those pieces together. It's the same thing as an entrepreneur. Study it. Study the best, but then you have to be in the game. Otherwise, everything they're saying, it won't resonate at that level where it truly sticks. You won't truly understand and process what they're saying. So it's definitely immersing yourself by these experts, by these mentors, whether it's, a Jeff Bezos or just someone down, in your local neighborhood that's had a successful path that you're on. Always be looking to build those networks, but then get in the game. Make sure that you're actually going and knocking the doors and on the beach, whatever you're doing to validate your assumptions, and then marrying those two concepts together.
Okay, so we're taking the data, taking the information around the project you're most committed to at the moment, and that might be, if you're a startup, it might be raising capital or getting your first, getting some traction with a customer base. But sometimes, sometimes you can turn on a tape or a CD or a video on YouTube or something, and the person that's giving the information it's a little more of a pump up, right? There's Tony Robbins style pump you up, look inside yourself, think about who you want to be. You can be great. And, it sort of pumps you up to go out and, give you like a little adrenaline fix. But in terms of long-lasting desire or long-lasting information that's going to get you from point A to point B, thoughts on how you might contrast the inspirational person versus the person that is going to maybe even hold you accountable?
Yeah. It's a great question, Mark. And I think it's all important. I think as entrepreneurs, there's one thing that we kind of differentiate ourselves is we have a gut, an instinct that's right more often than it's not. And so lean on that. When you're down in the dumps and you don't want to listen to another podcast academically of the playbook on how to execute your growth strategy, then listen to an inspiring podcast. Listen to your gut and what you need for that day, for that moment to overcome that obstacle. Sometimes it will be inspiration. Sometimes it will be tactical. Sometimes it'll be face-to-face. Sometimes it's a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes it's a hand to high five. But trust your gut on what you need in that moment to get you over that hurdle, and you're going to be shocked at how often that's exactly what you need for that next step, that next chapter. And it's always evolving. So don't assume that just because it worked, whatever you did last time, it worked this time. Always be listening to that gut for what you need next.
So you've heard of Simon Sinek, I assume, yeah. So he has one of his concepts is start with why, and you hear that around the venture capital and the startup communities. And you got to know your purpose, you got to know your why, and starts with that kind of stuff. And I sort of wonder how much. Sometimes I'll ask people. We sit right here in we call this Inside Mark Tank, inside the Marquee Media Studios, Inside Mark Tank, and we'll have these, I guess, deep conversations about, well, why are you doing this? As we're thinking about maybe making an investment or giving some feedback on their approach, and why are you doing it? And some people have this deep-rooted feeling of, solving a big problem in the world. Some people might have something that happened to them when they were a child, and now they're solving that problem. And some people just want to make a ton of cash. Is there how much a factor do you put into these different kinds of whys when you think about that? Because I know you probably want to know how driven they are, but sometimes that drive is inspired by the reason that they want to do something.
Yeah. Well, from personal experience, I just want to make a ton of cash.
Yeah. That's not wrong,
honestly,
right?
I'm not passionate about online lecture notes. I'm not passionate about helping real estate offices go paperless. I was passionate about being financially free. That was my dream. That was my why. And every decision you can look at it was black and white. And my resume, my life resume, not what something necessarily goes on a resume, my life resume showed that. I picked up and left everyone that I know and love and moved to a city that I've been to maybe once, Arizona, Phoenix, Tucson for U of A, because it was the best entrepreneurship school I could afford. It was a black and white decision for me. You see what I'm saying? And so that was my dream and my why dictated everything I did. And so when I'm interviewing an entrepreneur, I don't necessarily care what the motive is, whether it's altruistic or whether it's money driven, but I want to see a resume that reflects that passion is deep within them, that they've made decisions leading up to this point that reflect that all the way. If I go back 1 year, 5 year, 10 years and look through all the decisions they made, you can see that through that lens why they made those decisions. And that's the entrepreneur that's going to be committed to overcome those challenges and whatever else they encounter along that journey. So that's what I'm looking for when I talk to an entrepreneur.
Okay, so let's speak for a minute to the person who is not an entrepreneur yet. They hear you and me talking about how great it is. Of course, there's a struggle and a tough journey, but sounds inspiring. And we spoke earlier that entrepreneurship, it's being glamorized at some level, but it is pretty darn hard. But you have that person out there that I don't really have a why yet. Yeah, I'd like to make a ton of cash. That sounds good. I don't really have my idea yet. But I'm inspired to go figure it out. Thoughts on how we might help that person.
Oh man. First off, I believe that we all have a why inside of us. It's a matter of uncovering it. And sometimes it's nurtured and sometimes it's not, but everyone has it. But if you want to, if you feel like you're disconnected from that why, you just don't have a clear idea what it is, you got to go date. You got to go date ideas. You got to get out there. You can't sit behind a keyboard and hope that idea is going to hit you. You got to go talk to people, talk to Marks, talk to me. Go find a company that inspires you and go work for them. Yeah. I promise you, if you truly are an entrepreneur, you will find opportunities. I can't tell you how many countless, I feel like, billion-dollar ideas I've come across just because I'm in it. I'm like, oh, that's a billion idea. I don't have time for it, but someone should go pursue that. If you're in the game, if you're talking to people, you're working in it, you're at the events, the idea is going to come to you, that inspires you, that you're going back to your gut. Your gut's gonna be like, that's our idea. Let's go get after that.
Don't sit on the sidelines. If you don't have a dream, go be around somebody, some people that have those dreams, and the inspiration will come to you. The ideas will tend to surface. I would agree with that 100%. And so thinking about the entrepreneur now, I'm bouncing around a little bit. Now, the entrepreneur that's in the trenches, it's a common question that I get around life balance. It's stressful. And, how should I be thinking about keeping my life in balance if I'm a startup? Because as we both know, life balance and startup don't really go in the same conversation unless you're trying to figure out how to solve for it.
Yeah. Oh man, this is a loaded question. I might not have the best answer for this. People might not like it, but I don't believe in balance.
Okay.
When I was building both my companies, I felt like my passion, my hobby, and my job were all the same thing. On SkySlope, they were all of them. They checked all my boxes for me. I didn't want to do anything else every single day. I didn't golf. I didn't, go hang out with my buddies. I didn't do a lot of stuff. I didn't play a lot of sports, during that period when I was growing those companies. I just wanted to build my business. And it filled me up. It inspired me. I left my office with goosebumps because every single day, even though I just put in 14-hour days, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and do the exact same thing. I loved it. That's not for everyone. And you know what? That season didn't last forever for me. It goes back to trusting that gut on it. Like when you are inspired and motivated by what you're doing, don't take your foot off the gas. Leverage that. Put in those 14-hour days because there will be a time when you get burnt out, and then you deserve that week-long vacation where you completely unplug and disconnect. And your body's telling you, your mind's telling you that, and you're gonna come back and ready to hit it again just that same way. But I don't want to put any shame on people that want to put in those 14-hour days, 7 days a week, especially when it's filling up your cup and you're not being drained by it. You're being inspired by it. My relationships and my extracurricular stuff outside of work got better when I was putting in those hours because I was just so fulfilled in that bucket of my life. So again, it ebbs and flows. There's seasons of it. Just become aware of it. Tune into it. And don't let outside optics or perspectives, gear you. Do what you need for yourself.
Yeah. As I opened up the podcast with do what you love and call it work, which is really what ends up. Hopefully, I wish everybody to have an occupation like that, whether you're an entrepreneur or somebody else. But if you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life. And being obsessed many times is the difference between making it or not making it, or overcoming an obstacle or not. Because the more you immerse yourself, the better chance you are of figuring out probably figuring out the answer. But then you have to figure out the other challenge to that. You're married, no kids, but the other challenge to that is, how do I keep the other people in my life at bay or satisfied? And I've always told this is my self-talk, so this is not politically correct either, but you got to be a good sales guy, right? Yeah. You better be passionate about what you're doing, that you can convey that to other people. And they kind of cut you some slack because it's not a marathon, it's a series of sprints. I'm in one of those sprints. Yep. It's called Startup Land. And honey, you're going to have to back me on this, right? Because I am that obsessed. And maybe you're not with the right person. I shouldn't say that. Maybe you need to be a better salesperson or demonstrate a further commitment so that they rally around you, because maybe that's part of the challenge.
Well, it's empathy too. I think as entrepreneurs, we have to have immense levels of empathy because we have to understand our customers. We have to understand how they're going to receive marketing messages. We have to understand how they're going to receive our product, how the optics of it all matters. And the same thing goes with our partners and our friends. Yeah. We need to have empathy for them, understand how our actions are being perceived by them. How can we make them still feel special and validated and their concerns heard, even when we're putting in that kind of time at the office. Yeah. And there's ways of doing it, you have to be intentional about it. You have to be aware of it. And it's, think of it when you do it as kind of training to be more empathetic at your job too. So you can feel like it's a double-edged sword in the best way possible when you're doing it that way. Training.
Be empathetic. Great idea. But yeah, I agree though. Now, laying the groundwork, I think, for any challenging time in someone's life, you got to sort of lay the groundwork so you do have the support system. I think you're going to have a lot better chance of success if you've got the people that care most about you in your corner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about, okay, so one of the things in success is, you think about the startup, sometimes it's a solopreneur and they need to put other people in their life to help them be more successful. And I'm of the belief, and maybe this is a little bit of a sports background, and I'll take it from CrossFit, right? So CrossFit, they have something called an AMRAP, as many reps as, you do CrossFit? You're in great shape.
I did, and then it broke my body. So I do
Well,
glamour muscles at the gym now.
Yeah. So, but they have something to do as many reps as possible. And I've often thought, and I've articulated this over the years to people, that we really need to figure out what we're good at, put other people in our lives that are good at things that we are not as good at. And then we need to do is, I call it banging, as many reps as possible at your highest and best opportunity, right? I think a lot of times as startups, we get ourselves trying to do everything and trying to be great at everything, and invariably that turns out to be virtually impossible.
Yeah, I'm viewing that I completely agree with that. I'm viewing it through two lenses. One is when SkySlope got to 200 employees, and one when SkySlope was at 2 employees.
Okay.
I think you hear that a lot, that you have to do what you're best at. You have to focus on your area of expertise and hire the best in those other areas. And one thing Tyler and I did back when we got to a larger scale is we audited our days. We calculated that it cost, I think at the time, this is a while back, cost like $50,000 a day to keep the lights on at Sky. So payroll, expenses, everything like that, $50,000 a day. And so we challenged each other where we wrote down everything we did, kind of broke it down hour by hour for a week straight. And then we looked over that list together and we said, how many of these daily activities are actually $50,000 activities? And it was crazy to think how, 60% of our days were reactionary things that people come into us with stuff that was not high ticket, not needle moving stuff. And it was a byproduct of us just holding on to previous tasks that were high value a year ago when it cost $10,000 a day to grow SkySlope, but now at $50,000, we need to let go of those. And so having someone that you have that relationship with, that you can do this yourself, but having someone that you can have that kind of relationship where they can audit your day together and you guys can really be critical of hey, this is stuff you got to let go of. This is stuff that you got to pass on. And I think that at 200 employee startup, I think you absolutely have to follow that philosophy. Is the difference between life and death, and people will, and from a company perspective, and people will hold on to the stuff that they like to do, and they need to let go of it. But at the early stage, when it was 2 employees, I did a bunch of stuff I didn't like that I wasn't necessarily that good at, but that's what you got to do. Yeah. That's I hear a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs saying, I'm just not good at that, or I'm not comfortable with that, or that's not my area of expertise. Well, that doesn't matter. You got to find quick, cheap, easy solutions to prove your ideas. And so that means you're gonna have to do some of that stuff. And then once you prove your concept and you raise some money or get some revenue, have some users, some customers, then you can bring on those people. But just don't be quick to put on that hat of, I'm just gonna focus on what I'm good at, and before you get that scale, that stage.
Well, one of the things that Gary Vee talks about is being self-aware. So as you're taking on a mentee, or you're trying to decide who I want as a mentor, I guess one of the things we might want to do is do a little bit of a self-assessment. So as people come in, maybe the Growth Factory, or just maybe somebody who hits you up offline, how do you help somebody become more? Because some people they can't see their blind spots sometimes. So would you point out to somebody maybe the glaring weaknesses, or point out to their strengths? I mean, how much is self-awareness affect the relationship with a mentee and a mentor, and maybe how would you deal with the tough love piece of that? With tough love might be like, I think you need to rethink this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any science that's backed this, but I bet self-awareness is one of the greatest indicators of success for entrepreneurs, having that self-awareness. And for me, when I'm mentoring someone, I follow the Kim Scott playbook. She has a Radical Candor as her book. She had a blog post about it, and she says there's 3 things you can do in every situation. When you encounter someone that's doing something that you don't necessarily agree with or you think is wrong, you can do nothing. You can be an a-hole, or you can tell them what's wrong. And they say being an a-hole is actually the second best thing you can do. Doing nothing is the worst thing you can do. But being candid, just bluntly, radically candid with them, telling them exactly what's going on and how they can improve and how you see it, the optics of it, is the best thing you can do for these individuals. And so I have a track record and a reputation of just being very blunt, very candid. I'm not I don't really sugarcoat it. I'm just going to tell you how it is and how I see it. And I think every mentor, that's one of the best things they can do for their mentee is just not hold back. Don't be an a-hole about it, but be radically candid.
Yeah. I've heard from other mentors in the past that listening is a pretty enormous part, right? People want your advice. They want to pick your brain, but in terms of like waiting, I mean, you have a lot of experience. We could share a lot of information. We could talk at people. But how important is listening? Do you feel like it's more important or less important than the information that's in your head?
Whew. I think listening's probably one of the most important parts of the equation for both sides. I think I think that's obvious for the mentee. I think the mentee realizes they have to listen and they have to apply it and try to apply it to their business. But I think it's surprising how many mentors, when I kind of coach them on how to mentor, how important listening is. I think we're expected to have all the answers because we have that track record of success, whatever it is. And that's the worst assumption we can make. We need to listen first, understand, and then it's experience sharing. It's like, hey, this is what I hear you saying, and this is how I've dealt with that. Or even better, I know someone that has a little bit more specific experience from that. Let me point you to them. Don't always have to feel like you have all the answers to give and impart on them. Listen first, deeply listen first, and then experience share or delegate to someone else that has better experience on that. But listening is an equal part for both sides of that equation.
All right, well, let's talk about the Growth Factory a little bit and the mentors that you're bringing on, what you look for. I've described to other people as this is a little bit like Match.com. Take the best of the best in entrepreneurship or specific industries and matching them up specifically with the startup founder that is the best fit for that particular scenario. So what kind of mentors are you bringing on? I think they've got a good sense of you, but you can't mentor one-on-one with everybody that comes through the Growth Factory.
All right, I'm going to give you a real long-winded answer. Is that okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, because I'm excited about the Growth Factory and what it's bringing to this community. So I've been an entrepreneur. I've born and raised in Sacramento. I have a lot of roots here. Folsom High is where I graduated from. And I have a lot of just love for this community. And when I moved back here in 2012 to build my last startup, I was so excited to get plugged into this community. I was excited my assumption was I was coming from the Bay Area. It's a big community, a big tech community, and it takes a while to get in there, to get fully immersed in it. It takes years, and sometimes it never happens. It's because it's so vast. And I thought when I come back to Sacramento, it'd be like one phone call, and I'd be plugged into the entire network, and we could all help each other. And it didn't exist, and I just think the market wasn't ready for it yet. We just didn't have the pieces. And that's why I'm so excited about the Growth Factory today is because we have the investment, we have the capital here. We have the aspiring entrepreneurs, but we also have the network of mentors that have actually done it. They've been in the trenches or they're in the trenches. We have the poster children of people that we can fall behind saying, hey, they did that in Sacramento. They didn't do it in the Bay Area. They did it here in our backyard. I can do that. And that wasn't here 10 years ago. But now we have the Grins and the Trifectas and the Hanks and the SkySlopes. We have these companies that have had big exits and are doing big things, raising rounds, getting national recognition, global recognition at times. I think that's what's so inspiring to me is now these entrepreneurs in our backyard don't need to go to the Bay Area to find that. They can find it right here. And the beauty is you said this at one of your presentations, we're a community over competition type of mindset. And I love that because that is who Sacramento is. Every single entrepreneur that's listening to this right now is one phone call away from being plugged into anyone in this ecosystem that's done big things. You can't get that in the Bay Area. That's our competitive advantage in this region. And that's what I'm so excited because we're finally laying that foundation for that. And it's just going to be, I just think it's going to be a rocket ship now that we're planting the seeds on this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think is unique is, you talked about, some of these companies and their founders and their executive leadership, and they've had this success, but they bring love to the equation. And many, Brandon Brown, the CEO of Grin, he's got a lot of things he could be working on, but right in the middle of COVID, he's trying to help people in our community, local small business people, founders in our community, sort of make their way through the scary moments that a lot of us felt during the beginnings of COVID. But love is something like you can't teach that, right? Mm-hmm. That's just like, do you feel it? Do you have a love of our community? Do you just have a built-in respect for people who are trying the same journey that you've done? It's like somehow Sacramento has that.
Yeah. And like Brandon's a great example. We graduated in the same Folsom High class, actually. But we have the roots here. Everyone in San Francisco, they're all transplants. They don't have the roots to it. They have no connection, no identity to it. Whereas here, we want to help our fellow entrepreneurs, the fellow individuals that were born and raised here, had the same experience as us, had the same aspirations of us. It's just a different mindset. It's larger than any one of these individual relationships. It's a community at whole that we want to see thrive. And I think it manifests itself in love. I think that's how it shines through. And that's just what inspires me so much about what we're building because of that.
Yeah, interesting. So you think about one-on-one mentoring or group mentoring and getting that this sort of information from, I'd say, practitioners of entrepreneurship, and then that's got a value. But then there's these I'll call them specialties of mentors that might know a lot about HR or legal or IT or marketing or something like that. It's like, can you describe how the mix might work in terms of the Growth Factory? Somebody comes into the Growth Factory. What would that little team look like?
Yeah. I think that, again, goes back to what makes the Growth Factory so special is it's finally a centralized location for everyone to get plugged in. It's you walk through the door and you're instantly plugged into those specialties. And that's all it takes. It doesn't take rocket science. We don't have to come in here and craft this perfect plan. It's just having this Rolodex where you walk in, virtual Rolodex, saying, "Oh, what do you need help with? HR? Great. Here's 3 people, right here." You contact any one of them have raised their hand saying, "I want to help entrepreneurs." You can call any one of them, all 3 of them, sit down with coffee with them, lunch with them, and you're meeting with them the next day. So there's no secret sauce to it. It's just getting everyone together with an aligned mission. And that's what I'm so confident and excited about. Is I'm certain that all the mentors we have, area of expertise and otherwise, everyone is along that same mission, that same mindset. We just want to help. And so all we need is entrepreneurs to come to us, and we'll get them plugged into whatever they need.
Okay, so what about bad advice or advice that you get from somebody who's maybe self-dealing or self-serving? And it's like, who do you get help from? And you don't want to get bad advice. If you're a startup, I mean, you don't want bad advice. You don't want to go the wrong direction if you can avoid it. And you certainly, it's not as rewarding many times to do business with people who are sort of self-dealing first. Me first on the mentor side. Thoughts on that?
Bad advice. You'll tune into it very quickly, I feel like. Again, going back to kind of trusting your gut. But people that know what they're talking about know what they're talking about. And it's evident when you sit across from them. They can get into the weeds instantly and just talk, just free flow. The people that don't, they hover along the surface. And so my advice is always just tune into that. How comfortable is this person talking about it? How natural does it come to them? Then those individuals I would trust most of the advice coming from those individuals. The ones that are more surface level, top level, be wary of whatever advice you give to them. They might be aspiring mentors or aspiring entrepreneurs, but actually haven't been in the trenches. And you just don't want to get advice from them that's not actually lived it and experienced it.
The truth is in the trenches. And if the people that speak the truth, they know what it's like to live in the trenches. And I agree with you. They can, easy. I never really thought of it as like a quick, I like your little hack there on get those questions out of the way. If they can't go deep on a subject or the subject that you're interested in, then maybe they're not your mentor for that particular topic. So make that decision early based upon how deep they go into the trenches in their experience share. Okay, so let's just kind of make it last couple of questions. I want to give you a chance to give closing thoughts and maybe whether it be about the Growth Factory, about entrepreneurship in general, but I just want to kind of like throw you the mic and let you sort of free flow to the audience about entrepreneurship, being a venture-backed, obviously SkySlope, you guys did it without venture backing. Your first company, sounds like you got some venture capital, but just to the venture-backable founder, just thoughts, free flow to that guy.
Oh man, stop focusing on trying to get validation through raising money. Focus on providing value to your customer and doing that as quickly, and I said this again, as quickly, as efficiently, as cheaply as you possibly can. The rest will take care of itself. I think, and again, going back to glamorization, like everyone glamorizes raising money and big money and, venture backed and whatever kind of back. And that's a route. That's a very successful route for a lot of companies, but it's not for every company. So don't go in heads down, tunnel vision with that as your only option. SkySlope is a great example of it. With Note Hall, we went venture backed and we were backed into a corner. Our options were limited. It was either, sell the company or go bankrupt. Like there was no in between. There was no like, hey, you know what? This is a great business. Let's take dividends from the company and just go retire for a year or something like that. That wasn't an option. Our board of directors wouldn't have allowed it. Our investors wouldn't have allowed it. With SkySlope, Tyler and I had options. After 8 years of building the company, we were like, you know what? Now is probably a pretty decent time of taking some chips off the table. But if we don't get the right deal that we want, we don't need to. Yeah. And we had all the options on that. And so it was just kind of winning with that mindset. SkySlope, if we would have raised money early on, we would have just burned it. The market wasn't ready for us to pour into it. We grew and evolved with the market. So when we, if we would have just tried to saturate with marketing materials and educate our user base, it would have fallen on deaf ears. We had 5% of the market when 5% of the market was ready to adopt. We had 7% when 7% was ready, 10% when 10% was ready. There was never, if we would have just done a mass marketing campaign, it wouldn't have worked. And that's the market evolved and matured with us. And because of that, we didn't need to raise venture backing. And a lot of people thought we were crazy for that. They're like, oh, now's the time, go all in. But we knew the market better than anyone. And that's when I go back to the entrepreneurs. When you have your idea, when you have your dream, when you have your goal, dive into that market, become the subject matter expert, and you'll know where the market is going 5 years from now and what's the right move. Does it make sense to raise venture money now, or maybe build some cash flow and, let things play out a little bit as the dust settles in these emerging markets? But you should know and trust your gut. Don't just do something because you saw your buddy do it or it's been glamorized somewhere else. Trust your gut on that. You know the market better than anyone, and follow the path that is right for this business.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to raise money from your customers as part of the strategy, and then getting venture backed. Thoughts to that person that says, well, I'm going venture backed. I've got my proof of concept. And I believe that my window says I don't have time to wait for sales. I need the money to help me get those sales rolling. Thoughts maybe toward that person?
First, just be able to make that argument, in front of really smart people. Pitch that in front of really smart myself, you, other investors. Make sure they're going to go there and poke holes. Well, why do you need to raise that money? How are you going to use those monies? What's the competitive landscape? What's the other extra, macroeconomic factors that are going to be able to answer those questions confidently. And those individuals will poke holes in that. So you have that case and you'll be able to be like, yeah, I can answer all these confidently and I do need to raise venture. And the person sitting across will be like, yeah, you know what? You answer all those and you actually do need to go raise venture. Well, let's make some introductions for you. That could absolutely be the path. So yeah, again, it's just every business is different. Understand your economics intimately, your industry intimately, and the past should reveal itself, especially when you're kind of bouncing these things off mentors and advisors that are familiar and have the experience in the space.
Every business is different. Follow your gut. Some great wisdom from DJ Stephan. So much experience. And he's lending it to the Growth Factory, which means we lend it to you, the most promising startups in the region. If you want more information, obviously, you know where to find me. Again, thank you, DJ, for coming on the show finally and sharing your story and so much of your thoughts that are important for us as we take our entrepreneurial journey so seriously.
Thank you, Mark. It was an honor to be on the show.
You betcha. Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.